going the distance with local sports. This is the X Sports Network.
in college football when Michigan can throw the ball. 270 passing yards against Wisconsin isn't much, but they got an interesting game this Saturday against a team with a not very good defense. They'll have an opportunity to try to stretch the field for. Hop on over to the afternoon slate of games. We'll start with Boise State, 3-1 going on the road to face off with 2-2 Notre Dame. This one was all Irish really from start to finish. It wasn't as dominant as many of Notre Dame's previous games had been, but it also felt like they had control of it really from start to finish. They didn't allow Boise State to get the ground game going. Still had 100 yards rushing, but on 30 carries, over 30 carries, less than 3 yards a rush isn't going to get it done. And then when they went to the air with Maddox Madsen, Notre Dame's defense was ready. Leonard Moore had 2 picks of Madsen's 4, and it was really all Irish from start to finish. This looked like a 2024 Notre Dame kind of win. They didn't ask C.J. Carr to do a whole lot. It was mainly Love and Price on the ground that they got it going. And, Boise State had the ball, it felt like, most of the game. I mean, you go to, they had 315 yards of offense, but they had the ball for 36 minutes. That's very one-sided, and for them to not be able to put anything up other than that one touchdown shows the toughness of this Notre Dame defense as they've really stepped up in the middle part of this season. We'll head out to Southern Cal for a Big Ten game. Number 7 Penn State going on the road to face off with UCLA. Props to UCLA taking a 42-37 win there. This one's not on Drew Aller, James Franklin, or anybody on that Penn State offense. This one goes on the defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. Penn State steals this defensive coordinator from Ohio State, pays him $3.1 million. The next highest paid offensive or defensive any coordinator is the defensive coordinator from LSU, Blake Baker, making $2.5 million this year is the reason that LSU has been competent this season. And you let Nico torch you for almost 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. And you go look at Ohio State right now with Matt Patricia. Their defense is better with I think less quality players and with a what I would initially thought a less quality coach, but it seems like Patricia is definitely the head honcho on this one. But yeah, UCLA ran the ball extremely well. 52 carries, 280 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's going to get it done a lot of the time in the Big Ten. And props to Jerry Neuheisel and everybody on that UCLA staff for even showing up to play. I mean, there were not a lot of fans here. They tried to do the blue out, and have a bunch of blue in the crowd, but that only worked because both of these teams are blue. But hey, big props to UCLA on picking up a Power 4 win this season, much less a win, but a Power 4 win, because that is something that Penn State still does not have, and the next team we were talking about still does not have, and that being number 9 Texas. They went on the road to face off with Florida, and Florida got the best of them, 29-21. Florida needed 3 things to win this game. They needed a great home atmosphere. They needed their defense to step up, and they needed DJ Lagway to play better than you expected him before the season. That's what I thought you would need to beat Texas. They got all 3 of them. They had a great home atmosphere. I mean, that was really my question mark going into this game. Was Florida going to have the swamp rocking? If they didn't, I think Texas has a much easier time because I think Noyes played a huge impact on this one. But listen, that Florida offense, DJ Lagway, Jaden Baugh, Dallas Wilson, and Vernell Brown III, all showed up. And those are freshmen and sophomores right there. Those aren't your upperclassmen. Those are children pretty much going out there and absolutely competing with Texas and taking it to them. And listen, Arch hasn't thrown the ball well all year. I'm not going to label him a bust yet because, look at a ton of quarterbacks who had a tough start to their year. But listen, it was a Manning playing at the Swamp. That wasn't going to go well. Peyton was 0 for 4. I think Eli was 0 for 1 or 0 for 2. So Arch, he beat them. He was on the team when they beat them last year. But I think the big problem comes with that run game. You have Travion Wisner, who ran for almost 1,100 yards last year. And 5 games this year, he has 91 rushing yards total. At this rate, he's going to run for, 250 yards maybe at the rate he's on right now? And Saturday was no better. 8 carries for 11 yards. You got a touchdown. Cool. You've got that is your 1 touchdown on the year. I get you've been a little banged up, but what has happened to Texas? And You'll see on my playoff predictions later down the road, I don't have Penn State or Texas in them, and I don't really have them too far on the outside looking in. These two teams have struggled mightily, and they were both dropped from the AP poll as a result of it. Number 16, Vanderbilt 5-0 on the year, was heading down south to Tuscaloosa to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide, and that one was really all Alabama. From the last 2 minutes of the first half throughout the entire second half, it was all Alabama. Diego Pavia got shut up on national television. He talked smack all offseason. He talked smack leading up to the game. And then goes in the stadium at Alabama, and you know how his personality is. I mean, he had Johnny Manziel on the sideline, as his, so-and-so mentor. You're practicing your kneel down. And listen, that's something that probably needs to be practiced. You don't do it in a stadium before a game. Maybe your last snap before you go in to the locker room one more time, but I don't know. I am against that. That is a bit too arrogant, especially in a game that you haven't won yet. Maybe if Tennessee's playing, ETSU or Chattanooga, or Alabama's playing South Alabama or whoever, Alabama A&M, their quarterbacks aren't doing that. Yeah, they're probably going to kneel down in that game, but they're not doing that. I think Alabama's defense did a tremendous job shutting down what killed them last year, and that was Junior Sherrill and Eli Stowers. Neither one of them were able to get anything going. Stowers had that long shovel pass for a touchdown last year, and then Junior Sherrill, obviously, the 4th-and-1 touchdown catch. And there were moments where Diego Pavia looked a bit selfish. And to bounce off of that, I think all you have to do is look at the snaps for Cedric Alexander, the running back for Vanderbilt. Has had a great season, but is not leading the team in rushing yards, and actually has 10 less carries than the quarterback. And if Vanderbilt was like an option team, like like a Navy or an Army or an Air Force, and some of them are even kind of veering away from it a little bit, your quarterback should not lead your team in carries. And especially in the SEC, where you're playing physical teams week in and week out. I mean, we saw Pavia last year; he was beat up, and I thought that the collection of talent around them would lead them to him not having to take as many carries, but nonetheless, still does not work. Listen, I think Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams are a real 1-2 punch, and Isaiah Horton at that number 3 guy is really good as well. Jam Miller was awesome. 22 carries, 136 yards, and a touchdown. That'll do in the SEC, especially when you have a quarterback as good as Ty Simpson, because this dude, once he gets to the NFL, give him an offensive line. Doesn't matter who the receivers are. He's going to find them. This dude, when he's given time, his shredding defenses apart. And I get, if you look at Alabama's schedule now in hindsight, it doesn't look very tough at all. They have the loss to Florida State, who has struggled tremendously. We'll get to them later. And then wins over UL Monroe, Wisconsin. The win at Georgia looks really good. And then Vanderbilt, who I think is a quality win right now. But from the way yesterday went, or from the way Saturday went, that's been a couple of days now, actually. I don't know how quality of a win Vanderbilt will look, say, in the middle of November or early December when you're trying to make the playoff. I'll head back to the ACC. Number 24, Virginia, going on the road to Louisville to show that new fancy AP poll ranking off, and boy, they got out of one that that's one of those where you just wanted the game to end and you win and you go back home, because Louisville, stat-wise, won this football game. But turnovers killed them, and we've seen that happen. It didn't hurt. It hasn't hurt Louisville enough to lose them a game until this one, but they've been toying on that line all year. Miller Moss looked great again. But once again, he's sacked a ton, and when you can't run the ball, that immediately just stops the clock and allows UVA to run the ball down your throat. But you had 2 guys that totaled almost 1,800 rushing yards last year, and Isaac Brown and Duke Johnson. And those guys were both just complete no-shows on Saturday in that one. And that's been the struggle. When Louisville has been able to run the ball, they are one of the best teams in the country. Duke Watson, not Duke Johnson, pardon. But 14 carries for 68 yards and no touchdowns, when the starting running back alone for Virginia had 16 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's what hurt them. And Virginia's defense came up big. I mean, this is a defense that gave up 46 points to Florida State the week before. They held Louisville to 27. That's going to get the job done, and you could be looking at a quiet college football playoff contender coming down the line. Washington at Maryland, that one a midday game on the Big Ten Network. Washington, a big comeback in that one, and wins this one 24-20. Heartbreaking loss for Maryland and the Terps. They were up 20-3 going into the fourth quarter, and they had done nothing, 130 yards of offense, and then a complete defensive collapse by Maryland. 3 long touchdown drives from Washington that made up 2/3 of their total yardage in this game. And the problem with Maryland is they're really young, and they don't have that veteran at wide receiver or quarterback that they can rely on in a big game in big moments, because Washington had the ball almost the entirety of the fourth quarter because they were putting on long, continuous drives, and it felt like Maryland was going 3 and out if they ever touched the ball in the fourth quarter, and really much of the second half. But it sucks that they have freshmen at quarterback and running back and sophomores that they can't really rely on in a big moment yet. But listen, I think Malik Washington is incredibly talented, but they're going to have to find a run game if they don't want him throwing the ball 50 times every week. And trust me, that's not going to work if you're not an air raid offense anymore. Michigan State, Nebraska, that one's going to go to the Cornhuskers 38-27. A big win for them and Matt Rule. They advanced to 4-1 on the year. Michigan State, I thought, had a chance to be that quiet Big Ten team that you're looking at the end of the year, and they're 8 wins, maybe 9. Because I think Jonathan Smith is a really good head coach, and I think Aiden Childs has potential to be a really good quarterback. And that's what I thought was going to be, the reason for 38-27, the score would be a quarterback battle, but really it wasn't. Emmett Johnson was awesome and pretty much won this game for Nebraska on his own. Had 13 carries, 80 yards, and three touchdowns. But I think the big piece in this one was Deshaun Singleton, the safety defensive back for Nebraska. Had 2 interceptions, picked off Aiden Childs twice on 2 terrible throws from Childs. And that's the thing with him. He can make some of the best throws, the best plays you will ever see, and then follow it up with an absolute duck. And that was, he had 2 of them right there. And that, it was an 11-point game. That's 2 possessions. Say you score on one and you keep Nebraska from scoring on one of those. You win that game 34-31, but now we're talking about a 4-1 Nebraska and a Michigan State team that is going to struggle in the Big Ten. On to the night games, Texas Tech 35, Houston 11. This game was all Texas Tech. I thought with both teams being so highly ranked and forcing turnovers that was going to play an impact. It didn't really. There were 3 Houston turnovers to Texas Tech's 1. Those 2 drives weren't going to change anything. Baron Morton was awesome. 28-40, 345 yards and a touchdown. That's 70% completion percentage too. But their running back tandem of Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey were awesome. You have 2 guys that get about 20 carries, a little around 100 yards, and Williams had 2 touchdowns. Dickey didn't have any. But that's 2 guys on 20 carries getting 5 yards a carry. Texas Tech is legit. I don't know if they're a national championship contender, necessarily with skill and everything, but they are by far the best team in the Big 12, and they're going to be a very high seed when we come to December and look at that playoff poll. TCU got back on track with a 35-21 win over Colorado. Josh Hoover was really good again, 23 of 33 passing, 275 yards and 4 touchdowns to 11 different receivers. He was really spreading the ball around. And then Caden Salter, quarterback for Colorado, struggled once again, had 3 interceptions. Colorado had a 14-0 lead again in this one and let it slip away once again. And, these are 2 playoff teams trying to fight for the playoff that Colorado has just let come back in and win. Last week with BYU. Colorado is going to struggle this week, or struggle this year. We knew that. We're losing 2 first-round picks, or 2 quality first-round picks. Should have been, I think Shooter Sanders was drafted way too low. But nonetheless, Kansas picking up a big win at UCF, 27-20. UCF had 200 rushing yards on 40 carries. That was what Texas Tech did, and I said it's going to win you many ball games. But what Texas Tech has is a good quarterback, Baron Morton. What UCF doesn't have is a good quarterback. They have Taven Jackson. Listen, he ain't it. This is his 3rd stop. Didn't work at Tennessee once Nico came in. He hit the road, went to Indiana, realized he was not going to play after the Mendoza brothers transferred in, and now finds himself at UCF with Scott Frost, and it's just not worked. He doesn't have a very good arm, and while Jalen Williams' arm was able to guide Kansas up and down the field, LaShawn Williams putting 3 in the end zone was huge, and UCF is going to struggle until they get a good quarterback again. We'll go to the big game of the day on ABC. Number 3 Miami going on the road to face off with number 18 Florida State. I preached Florida State all week. They had lost one game and it was on the road against maybe a fluky game against what I think will end up being a pretty good Virginia team. Miami, while they have been tested, have not played away from home yet. I was dead wrong. 28-22 Miami with the win. They're legit. And I will stand on that until I am proven otherwise. They can, they could lose Friday to Louisville, and I would not change up my thoughts about Miami one bit. I mean, Carson Beck is allowed to play almost flawless, almost nearly 75% completion percentage, was 20 of 27 for 241 and 4 touchdowns. They have the best freshman in the country, Malachi Toney. He had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. C.J. Daniels had about 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Florida State made a comeback, but it was too little too late. Castellanos doesn't have the arm to bring you back in a game like that, and also doesn't have an arm to make that receiving core very useful other than Deuce Robinson. He's better than DJ Uyunglele, but not by a whole lot. I mean, this team's going to go better than 2-10, but I think there was a lot more problems for Florida State last year than just their quarterback play. and where they have been so good this year is breaking off long runs that have been difference makers in games like the Alabama game. They were able to break a long one off against Virginia, when they were able to come back in that one, but they weren't able to get the win. If they just broke one of those off in the third quarter and say it's 28-10 going into the fourth instead of 28-3, maybe the scoreboard looks a little different. Maybe Florida State has a win and completely shakes things up, but I think Miami might be one of the best teams in the country. Mississippi State at Texas A&M, 31-9 win for the Aggies. Another team that I think is legit in Texas A&M, and another team in Mississippi State I think is cooled off. Look, Texas A&M knew they weren't going to need a whole lot from Marcel Reed and didn't force him to do a ton. But Reuben Owens, man, the tailback. Last week it was Le'Veon Moss. This week Reuben Owens, 21 rushes for 142 yards. They have 4 guys that rushed for at least 30 yards. Casey Concepcion had 2 touchdowns, the NC State transfer. Texas A&M looks really good, and that defense was awesome. Fluff Bothwell and Devon Booth were all right, but Shapen has no help on the offensive line, which doesn't allow them to get the pass game going, which takes away the run game and makes those 2 guys useless and makes Mississippi State's offense score 9 points in an SEC game. Duke at Cal, I was dead wrong about this one. Jaron Sagapolatelli was not very good, had 3 interceptions, and Devin Brown, the Ohio State transfer, came in and threw 1 more. And Darian Mensah was good, and that's the difference between a freshman and a sophomore. You saw right there, 220 yards or 265 yards on 22 completions, 2 touchdowns. Nate Shepard, another guy I think is one of the best freshmen in the country. Props to Miami and Duke on recruiting, picking up these 2 guys. Because Duke obviously lost Star Thomas, their running back to Tennessee, and Shepard comes in. 12 rushes, 91 yards, and 2 touchdowns after having a huge game at Syracuse the week before. Maybe that kid's good on the road. But Duke forcing 4 INTs was the big difference in this game. So my picks, I was 12-7 this week. The middle of the day slate really screwed me up. I was, perfect Friday night. Only got Iowa State and Cincinnati wrong in the morning. But I mean, nobody saw Penn State and Texas losing. I think my Virginia-Louisville pick was a bit premature, and then Maryland choked on that one. I'm not taking too much blame on the wrong there. I will take full responsibility for picking Florida State and Duke, or Florida State and Cal. Those home teams did not defend home field position very well. Let's hop over to the AP poll, folks, because it is my favorite thing to look at every week. You've all probably seen it, but we'll just go over it together. Dropping all the way from number 18, and I'll just go ahead and say it, Cincinnati is the first team out, followed by Texas and Penn State. Florida State drops 7 spots to number 25 following their loss against Miami. 2 new teams in, Memphis, South Florida. Welcome to the AP Top 25 once again, South Florida, and then welcome the first time this season, Memphis. 4-1 South Florida, 6-0 Memphis. They're really good. Iowa State loses by 4, what was it, a 8-point loss on the road against a 1-loss team. and an 8-point loss on the road against a 1-loss team, and you drop them 8 spots. That seems a bit brutal when we have Vanderbilt go on the road and lose to a ranked team, and they only drop 4 spots. I mean, 4-8, I get. Alabama and Cincinnati are 2 different quality opponents, but I just feel like you're kind of hurting the Big Ten team more than you're hurting the SEC team. 21, Arizona State up 4 spots. Like I said, Vanderbilt at 20, they dropped 4 spots. Up 5 spots, Virginia at number 19 in college football. I mean, they haven't been this good since Bryce Perkins was there. It's fun to see new teams good. And, speaking of a new team that's been pretty good this year, BYU, and new in the sense that this is a lot different players from last year. This is not the Jake Retzlaff team. Up to number 17, up 5 spots, Illinois. You're going to see up 5 spots for the next 3 people. From 21 to 16, Notre Dame. From 20 to 15, Michigan. And from 19 to 14, Missouri. I would honestly flip Notre Dame and Michigan. I get their records are much different, but I don't think Michigan has a defining win. Their best defining win is against a unranked Nebraska team that is, 6th in getting votes out of the top 25. So 31. Georgia Tech at 13. Tennessee finally out of the depths of being ranked number 15, and they're number 12 now. LSU 11, Georgia 10. And now we're getting into the span of this top 9. These are solid teams. You got Texas Tech at 9, Bama 8, Indiana 7, Oklahoma and A&M flipped from 5 and 6. So A&M is now at 5, Oklahoma at 6. Ole Miss remains at 4, and then Oregon and Miami once again flip-flopped. Oregon at 3, Miami at 4, but those teams separated by a couple first-place votes. And then at number 1, as they have been for every week since week 1, the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I thought it'd be a good idea to look at what the playoff would look like, maybe, if it started today. So I decided I'd give y'all my playoff 12. And we'll just see what how interesting of a playoff this would be. So at number 1, and I don't think this will change. I think it's going to be the Big Ten champion, and I think that's going to be Ohio State. It could be Oregon. Flip-flop their spots, based on who wins. Number 2, I got the ACC champ Miami. I don't think there's anybody in the ACC that can compete with them. Number 3, the SEC champ, Ole Miss. They've looked awesome this year. They've looked awesome really all year. They struggled at Arkansas, at home against Arkansas for a little bit, but that was when Ole Miss was still dealing with quarterback transition, and now that they've found their guy, they're going to be dangerous. Number 4, I have the Big Ten runner-up in Oregon. Number 5, I have Texas Tech, your Big 12 champ. Number 6, Texas A&M, your SEC runner-up. What an SEC championship game that would be. Number 7, Indiana. Number 8, I have your Big 12 runner-up in BYU. At number 9, I have your ACC runner-up in Georgia Tech. At 10 and 11, I have Alabama and Oklahoma. And then at number 12, my highest-ranked Group of 5 champ, I have Memphis. The first 4 teams out, and this is as of now. This is not, looking later down the road. I think your first 4 out are Tennessee, I think LSU, I think Missouri, and I think Illinois. That next group of 4, I have Notre Dame, I have Georgia, Illinois, I have Notre Dame, Arizona State, Virginia, and LSU. So, it's a good group of teams, but I have them just on the outside looking in. I think Notre Dame has plenty of time to get back in. I think Tennessee and Georgia also do. That Georgia-Ole Miss game coming up in 2 weeks, I believe. That's gonna probably switch some things up, I would imagine. And then Illinois, they got a game against Ohio State this weekend. That could really mess things up for a lot of teams. But yeah, it's the college football playoff. We'll start getting some rankings a little later this month, and that's when the fun will begin, because then you're just going to be judged week after week, and that makes college football so much fun. Heading out west to Stanford. Some interesting news. The football program received a $50 million donation from a former player, making it the largest single donation in program history. And I'm just trying to think of who. Christian McCaffrey hasn't signed a contract worth that much yet. Andrew Luck's net worth is probably right around $50 million. So I've got it down to 2 teams. 49ers GM John Lynch, who also has that Stanford connection with Christian McCaffrey, or John Elway. I mean, $50 million is a lot, and that can really change a football program. This isn't something that's going to a building or going to go to parking tickets at the university. This is for football. I don't know if that's going to build new facilities, if it's going to help bring in new players, because Stanford is struggling this year, and they will continue to struggle. We'll stay out west in Colorado. Head coach Deion Sanders had a 4-hour-long procedure yesterday to treat blood clots in his leg. As of now, is not expected to miss practice today. Not sure whether or not he did. But hey, I mean, that's a coach looking like he's trying to motivate his 2-3 squad through a cutthroat Big 12. and you look at some of those tough teams in the Big 12. It feels like Colorado's got to play most of them. I mean, let's just look at the Buffalo's schedule right now. They've already faced Houston, who was really good. They faced Georgia Tech, BYU, TCU, almost beat them. Then they have Iowa State this weekend, Utah the next weekend. And then, Arizona, West Virginia, but then Arizona State and Kansas State to close it out. That's a tough schedule. Hope Deion's doing better from that procedure. And maybe he can turn his Buffaloes around, but with the quarterback play they're getting right now, I don't see that happening. And some great news. The 15-day transfer portal has officially been approved by the NCAA D1 Administrative Committee. The window will now be open once per year from January 2nd until January 16th. That is your only time to transfer unless, obviously I believe the rules are still in place where if your coach leaves, you have 30 days to transfer. Not 100% sure about that. And Hulu and UNC have had a strange falling out. I've talked about how bad North Carolina has been this year, and it's carried over into the it's come over to the media side of things in the sense that Hulu, and this was back in middle of July, a docuseries was supposed to be following Bill Belichick in North Carolina in his first year there on Hulu. That was reported by Front Office Sports back in July. Well, the season has obviously not gone well with UNC, and as of, make sure I get the time right, as of 11:30 a.m. Central Time yesterday, Bill Belichick in North Carolina's season-long documentary series with Hulu is no longer happening. Curious if they got footage. I would pay heavily to see what they got, because that's got to be some good stuff. That program has so much drama going on that it is bound to be some great stuff going on in there. That will do it for today's episode of the Mark My Words College Sports Show here on the X Sports Network. We will be back on a Friday as we break down once again another great week of college football. I'm going to stop saying that this week's great, this week's great, this week's a little weak, because every week college football is great. Just looking at some of the games you got right now, I mean, even on Friday, you got South Florida and North Texas. That's going to be a good one in the American. Bama, Missouri, Ohio State, Illinois, Indiana, Oregon. I mean, we have a ton of good football games coming up next Saturday, and we will break down those here on this show on Friday. So for your host, Michael Marks, this has been the Mark My Words College Sports Show. Have a good day, everybody.
Going the distance with local sports. This is the X Sports Network.